Continuing on with my basic do-it-yourself videos for the B7 RS4, I thought I'd cover spark plug removal and compression testing. Assuming you've already have the airbox out, the tools you'll need are a T20 Torx bit, a Phillips bit, a 5/8 spark plug socket. If you've never taken spark plugs out before, basically the only difference is it has a little rubber insert at the back that helps grip the spark plug when you pull it out. And you'll need some socket extensions so that your socket can reach the bottom of the spark plug well. We'll get started on the passenger side first. So before doing the plugs, you actually have to remove the airbox, and there's a video DIY available for that in the video description. And once you have that removed, you'll have something that looks like this, and we can get started. So the first thing you have to do is remove the two T20 screws. There's one here and over here. So once the screws are out, you can unclip the coil pack wire and remove it. Unfortunately for mine, the middle two are broken, but basically you just squeeze on the tab like I'm doing here, and you just pull them out. Once these are off, you can just pull the coil packs out. You just need to reach underneath and apply some steady pressure, and they'll eventually pop out. If you're having some trouble getting the coil packs out, what you can do is you can loop two zip ties together and slide them underneath the coil pack, and then you can just use that for leverage when you pull up on them. So once you get the coil pack out, you can use your 5/8 spark plug socket with an extension to take out the spark plug. Now, if you're reusing your plugs, you want to be careful that you don't bang around the tip when you take it out. And then the rest of the plugs are basically done the exact same way. You just pull out the coil pack and then you can just slide the spark plug out. Now let's take a look at the driver's side. You first need to remove this cover. It just pops off. If you need to, you can remove the front weather stripping, but that's usually not required. Next, you use a Phillips bit to remove the screw holding the coolant tank in. Once that screw is out, the tank is just being held in at the back, so you can just tilt the front up, and if you pull forward towards the front of the car, it'll pop out. You want to be careful that you don't stress the coolant lines at the front, the side, and the wiring at the bottom. Now you can take out the two T20 screws holding the wiring harnesses in, pretty much similar to how you did it on the passenger side, except you might need to slide your screwdriver or ratchet in creatively to get them out. Next, take out the dipstick. And now you can finally go ahead and unclip the wiring harnesses on all of the coil packs. So one thing you want to do when you're working under the coolant tank is make sure that you don't accidentally pull this cable. You can actually unclip it. It's not going to start leaking coolant or anything like that. If you're reading the factory manual, it does suggest that you drain and remove the coolant tank, but I find it's just a lot of extra work for no reason if you're just doing the spark plugs. Once you have the coil packs removed, you can just take out the spark plugs basically the exact same way. The only real difference on the driver's side is if you didn't remove the coolant tank. You just got to be careful that you don't overstress the coolant lines or the sensor cables if you didn't remove it. What I like to do is slide my extension in, and then attach the ratchet to it. One of the things you can do while the spark plugs are out is a compression test. You can basically buy one of these kits for about $20 Canadian at your auto parts. If you are doing this test though, just make sure that before you started removing everything that you found a way to run out the fuel. The easiest way is to disconnect the fuel pump fuse and just run the car until it dies. If you're wondering what to do with these values, you can check out the Audi Revolution tech section. There's a lot of good resources there. I've included a link in the video description below. So now you can go ahead and reinstall all your spark plugs. If you've never done spark plugs on a car before, one of the most important things to remember is that you always want to thread them back in by hand. What I like to do is go counterclockwise until I feel the thread starting, and then go clockwise to screw it in completely. Once they're nice and snug, you want to use a torque wrench and tighten them down to 22 pound-feet. And once you have the spark plugs back in and torqued down, you can just pop all the coil packs back in. attach all your connectors. To put the coolant tank back in, just tilt the front of it up, line it up with the brackets at the back, just 2 clips, and then you just slide it back in. Once it's all lined up, you can put the screw back in to hold it in place. Put the dipstick back in, easy to forget. And then just put the 2 T20 Torx screws back in. Back on the passenger side is basically the exact same thing. You want to realign the clips, slide them in until they click, make sure your coil packs are all the way in. And then put the 2 T20 screws back in. You want to be very careful with these because they're plastic screws and they thread very easily. So only hand tighten them, don't use a ratchet or anything like that. One thing I forgot to take on video is reinstalling the driver's side plastic cover, but that's pretty straightforward. I'm sure you guys can figure that out. And that's basically it. You just need to reinstall your airbox using DIY instructions in the other video. And that's basically it. Just start it up and make sure everything's running okay. And thanks for watching. If you have any suggestions on other DIY videos you want to see, just leave it in the comments.